Hi, I'm Zach from Airlink Technologies, and what we're going to do today is try to demonstrate how we install the windshields with our newly found Sill-Proof. We evolved to Sill-Proof after having a lot of problems with the vinyl ester resin crazing the windows and the time factor involved with having to rush to get the windshield in some of the bigger projects, door windows, quarter windows, and having the time constraints on you. With Sill-Proof, we don't have any reaction with the acrylic, and you have a wonderful open time. What I've got here are just the basic tools that we need. Some different size masking tapes, with 1/4 inch being the most important size that you need. Some stir sticks, some varying widths of sticks describing the windows, some razor blades, and some wet erase markers made by Vis-a-Vis. They're a fine point, and we'll use these inscribing, and they're readily removable when you need to remove the black. We also have some wing nut clecos that you can purchase from Avery. These are pretty important. These are how we clamp the windows in place, and the adjustability of the wing nut gives you the proper clamping pressure, where a normal cleco would have just the amount of pressure that the spring allowed it to have. The first thing you need to do, straight off, is to take the Sill-Proof that you have and find a piece of plastic or a piece of wax paper and run a bead of Sill-Proof, or 2 or 3 beads of Sill-Proof, and set this aside for about 2 days and let it cure. So you need to do this several days prior to your window installations. Set that aside, let it cure, and we'll use these as standoffs. We'll cut them into little pieces and use them as standoffs when we're adjusting the heights of the window out of the joggle so that the window is flush with the fuselage. What we've done is taken the turtle deck window, or the top deck window, and we've removed the masking paper about 1 inch back or so on the top and the bottom of the window. This is to allow you to see down through the window. What you want to do is you want to first make sure that the window fits in the joggles, just roughly. As long as it fits in there, that's what you want to start with. At that point, what you can do is you can take some weights and weight the window down and get it pretty much lined up all the way around where it's close to being in the center of the joggle. At that point, I take a Vis-a-Vis, one of the wet erase markers, and I take a tool of this. I'm using a stir stick, which lends itself very well. Put your stir stick against the joggle and your Vis-a-Vis on the inside, and you trace all the way around the window, and it'll leave marks where it needs to be trimmed out, and that way you'll end up trimming an even 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch all the way around the window to allow you to maintain a uniform gap. And now that we have the black scribe line on the window, I take a high-speed grinder with about 80 grit on a hard pad. and sand back down till the line is just about gone. The alternative method, if you don't have a grinder like this, is to use a high-speed 90-degree air grinder. Unfortunately, with a 3-inch pad, you're likely to ride off the edge a little bit more, so you have to be careful, a little bit more careful anyway. You could also use a belt sander if you wanted to, and just be careful that the belt sander is not jumping up and down, otherwise you run the risk of breaking or cracking the acrylic. High-speed grinders work the best. You need to run it as fast as you can so that you aren't shattering the acrylic. Remove the excess plastic on the bottom. Okay, now that we've ground to the black line, you want to remove the black line with just a little bit of water on your paper towel so that you can see the edge better. And you basically are going to position the window in the edges of the joggle and make sure that the reveal is going to meet your requirements for the proper width. You can choose to cut it close and narrow, or you can choose to open it up a little bit and give yourself some more reveal. Most of the time that's determined by the way the glass was cut from the factory. Usually it's about 3/16 of an inch. Once you're positioned this, you can come back and you can make little marks to let yourself know where it needs a little bit more trimming, or you can rescribe the entire piece if you wish. At this point, I'm pretty happy with the fit that I got on the first scribing, except for just a few little places which I'll trim out. And this process is you just keep scribing and fitting until you're happy with it. Of course, you can't add anything back, so take it down slow. And take some sandpaper, 80 grit, 40 grit sanding pad, and you need to straighten these lines from where they're routed at the factory and make sure that the radiuses all have a nice smooth curve to them. It won't take much to do it, just a few strokes on the flats. And a few strokes in the radiuses. Now that these are smooth and they're straight, what you're going to be able to do is place the window in the joggle and come from the underside with the window positioned exactly where you want it, and trace with a wet erase marker, trace on the underside the joggle line on the underside of the window. That'll be a reference point for you to tape to on the next step. Okay, now that you have the window positioned and your joggle trued, place your window where you want it. You use some sort of weighting technique to weight it down, and take a brand new wet erase vis-a-vis and come down underneath the window and make a very nice even line tracing the joggle. Okay, now that you have the line on the underside of the window, this being the top, this being the bottom, you want to take, say, a 3/4 inch masking tape or a 1 inch masking tape and tape to about 3/16 of an inch towards, from the line, on the inside of the line, all the way around. This is going to protect the window that you've exposed from the bleed out of the filter when we install the window. Being careful not to remove the line with your finger or rub it to where you won't be able to see the line again. Smooth this out, make sure the perimeter is down securely. Take your 1/4 inch masking tape and start from the inside and work the masking tape out just to the line in a nice smooth fashion, using the line as a guide to tape to. Be very careful not to come over the top of the line. You want to leave all of the black line exposed on this taping. That's quite important for the cosmetic look of the window when the window job is completed. Quarter-inch masking tape works the best because it's actually quite flexible, and the seal-proof doesn't interact with the adhesive, unlike vinyl ester, which would react with adhesive and lift the tape up. The seal-proof doesn't act that way. All right, now that you've met your starting point, you need to come back in and mark the tail that came over with a number 2. That designates the second layer of tape that you're going to remove in the process, and you need to make sure that it's the tail that came up on the finishing tail, so that you don't pull this one up and interfere here and get locked up. Now, I'll remove this black line with a little bit of water, just a tad bit. Remove that black line totally, 100%, and make sure that there's no residue left. Otherwise, you'll see it when we install the window. It'll be locked underneath the color of the seal-proof, and it'll always be there. Now, your second step to this process is to lay another layer of 1/4 inch tape down on top of this one, but you want to make sure that the 1/4 inch tape is to the outside. The second layer of tape needs to be to the outside of the first layer. It's not critical that it goes on straight. It's most important, though, that you don't leave the outer edge of this tape exposed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this tape down about a 1/16 of an inch this way towards the outer side of the window on top of this tape. I'm going to start off the same way, coming in and working over, and I'm using the inner edge as a guide. When I see a 1/16 of an inch here, I know that I'm overlapping the edge by a 1/16 on the outside. And we'll tape this off the same way we did the first layer. This layer is not as important to be straight, so you can wobble a little bit in your tape laying. It's going to get removed and you'll never see it. Corners are the hardest, so you be real slow with those and pull a little bit of tension on the tape as you go around the corner to stretch it. Now that we've met here, we want to make sure that we're 1/16 over the first layer and come back in and mark that number 1. That'll be the first layer of tape that we remove because it's the one that's on top. All right, now that you have it taped and you've got it all marked, I've taken some 80 grit sandpaper sheets, 8.5 by 11 full sheets, and I've folded them over and glued them together with spray contact cement and cut them into about 3/4 of an inch strips that are sandpaper on both sides and glued. And I'll take the window and use this strip of sandpaper and my finger on the bottom side on the edge to run as a guide, and I'll sand this window until all the shinies are gone, making sure that you do not hit the masking tape on the edge right here. On this edge, you want to maintain as tight as possible without touching it. You want to sand right up to it, but don't touch it. You don't want to fray this masking tape, because when you go to pull it off, you'll leave adhesive there, and the masking tape won't remove adequately enough, and will leave a residue in there. So it's very important for you to sand this down without touching the tape. You sand the entire perimeter until there's no more shiny left. When the sandpaper gets dull, you can flip it over and continue. And when that gets dull, you can just rip it off and just keep working your way back down with a piece of paper. The size of the paper is really easy to control this way, and your finger as a guide really helps stopping the sandpaper from getting to the tape as you're sanding. 100% sanding is pretty important. For adhesion of the sill-proof, or if you're choosing to do this by the book, 100% sanding is even more important for the vinyl ester.